Hi guys, it's Matt here from MCS-books, and today I'm going to do a book haul. It is my Femmeuary library book haul, in which I have taken out some non-fiction books. Now, as it is Femmeuary, I have taken out 4 books to continue reading in this month, which are written about women and predominantly are feminist academic texts. I also have 2 books which have nothing to do with Femmeuary, they are just books I was interested in. So, without further ado, let's just get to the books that I have taken out from the library this month. The first book you might have seen and you might have heard me talk about before, it is this one. This is Poems, Protest and a Dream by Juana Inés de la Cruz. This is a collection of poetry, other non-fiction, and a play, I think, is also in here, written by Juana Inés. I stumbled across her when I was watching the series Juana Inés on Netflix, and then did some more research into her life because I found her so fascinating, so interesting. And this book happened to be at the library, and I thought, well, I may as well pick it up because it sounds interesting. What I like about this is that it seems to take a lot of her work from very different areas. Like I said, there's poetry, plays, there's a theological essay, I think, in here. But also what I like is that on this page, or on these sides of the book, the translations in English are written, and on this side, the original Spanish is written, so you can sort of like compare and contrast. I don't know Spanish myself, I can read a little bit, but this is like a nice way for me to kind of pick up a few new vocabulary for Spanish. I am so interested in Juana Inés as a person and a historical figure, and I can't wait to actually read her work after kind of learning a little bit about her life. So this is definitely one that's top of my list to get to. So the next book, I was inspired by Sophie at Sophie P, and I think it was a book that she got for Christmas, I seem to remember, but she hauled it recently, and it just seemed so interesting and just so fun and exciting, and I wanted to read it and discovered that it was in my university library, so I got that out. It is Unsuitable for Ladies, an Anthology of Women Travellers by Jane Robinson. Now it basically tells you what it is in the title. It's a collection of sort of essays or biographies, I'm not actually entirely sure, but it's writings from women travellers or about women travellers and people who went to new exciting places and sort of broke the mould of it being a predominantly male career path. And it's set out really nicely. Chapters within this that bind all these works together are laid out. It's got setting out the continent, and then it narrows it down to all the places in the world that these women have travelled to. Just from the get-go, there seems to be lots of places. It does, however, seem to be one kind of fairly short chapter that's just titled Africa, whereas all the other continents seem to be broken down into other parts. However, I still think it's going to be interesting, it's going to be fun, it's going to be enjoyable to read, and it's just going to be interesting to find and discover some new female figures to inspire me, and I enjoy travel, and yeah, I think this will be interesting. So thank you, Sophie, for letting me know about this book. The next book that I had taken out, I haven't mentioned it before, but I have mentioned one of the editors before, and I have suggested that people read this book. So I know of this book, but I haven't actually read it in its whole. I have just read 1 or 2 essays taken from it. And that book is Arts of Living on a Damaged Planet. Now, the editors of this book are Tsing, who you might remember from one of my previous videos, Heather Swanson, Elaine Gann, and Niels Bubant. Bubant, I think that's how you say it. And within it is a collection of academics, both feminist academics and male academics, who are interested in sort of the post-human and imagining future for a life on a world that we are damaging, possibly irreparably. So I think it's just going to be a really fascinating collection of a real mix of essays covering lots of different subjects within the concept of living on a damaged planet. So I know that it's going to predominantly be focused on science within the imagining of the future, because a lot of these academics are very much interested in the anthropology of science, but it will also sort of incorporate the arts within the sciences and how the combination of both can provide us the tools that we need in order to survive, like ecological disaster or anything else that we could come across. It particularly looks at biology and plant life and animal life and how we can learn from the way that they grow, interact and survive in order to create a better way of living for humans themselves, as opposed to being just so obsessed with the Anthropocene. So I think of all the books, this will probably be the most heavy or the most academic, but I think it's going to be really interesting nonetheless. And I think it will just be a very inspiring topic, and it's something that I definitely want to learn more about. So the next two books that I picked up predominantly because I am interested in them, and also I am using them to sort of create and substantiate an argument that I'm making for the use of storytelling within ethnography. So the first one is this: A Thrice Told Tale, Feminism, Postmodernism and Ethnographic Responsibility by Margery, which I think is an incredible name anyway. Basically, this book is the sort of ethnographic document that Margery has created from her research out in the field. I think she was doing her fieldwork in Taiwan, and this is basically a compilation of her experiences and her understandings and what she learned from that. However, it is told in 3 different narrative styles, and each of them explore the roles of feminism, postmodernism, and the effect of responsibility on behalf of the anthropologist or the ethnographer when compiling their research document for either academia or other audiences. So whilst each individual text within this book deals with the same situation, same story, and based off the same research and experience that Margery has done, they all encapsulate a different viewpoint, and from that create new meanings or different understandings of the text. And she sort of ruminates on these styles as to what role does she have and what control over what she portrays to the other audiences, how that affects and impacts the story that's being told and the people who she is telling the story about. So I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating to hear her reflect on these different things. So the first text is a short story that she wrote soon after the event happened that she writes about. It's in a narrative storytelling format, which is what I am most interested in, to see how she deals with that. The second text is her field notes, written as she was in the moment and experiencing it. But it's going to be in note form, it's going to be spur of the moment, and it's going to really demonstrate what she felt at that time and at that moment was important for her to write down. And then the third text is an article written so many years after for an academic institute, in which she analyses what happened from her current position with so many years in between, and her sort of academic knowledge having grown, and then how this changes her perspective and her reading of her field notes and her work in the field. So I think it's just going to be really interesting. It's quite short, so it's going to be easy to get through, and can't wait. I'm fascinated to see what I can get from this and what I can learn from this, and ultimately to see what I can use from this in my own ethnographic practices. And the next text in a similar vein is one that I've actually just finished reading, and it is Exercises in Style by Raymond Queneau. I'm not 100% sure on the surname pronunciation. However, I love this book. It is similar to this in that there is one story. The story is simply that a man got on the bus, he noticed another man was shouting at somebody else, and then he saw this man again later on. That is the story. Very simply put, that is just it. It's 2 paragraphs in length. He then goes on to write it 99 different times in 99 different styles. And it's just incredible, what he can do with the language, and it really demonstrates the impact that stylistic choice when writing can have on the reader's understanding of the moment and the story. And having them all together in one collection creates this comical experience where you are allowed to see and to witness how the understanding of the story changes per style, which oftentimes the reader themselves are not privy to that sort of knowledge. So I'm going to talk later on about this book. I think I had to read it super quick because it's due back tomorrow, and yes, this book was great. The next book that I have taken out from the library is by a male academic who I have only read one of his essays before, but I absolutely adored that essay. I loved his writing style, and I wanted to know more about his thoughts and see more of his writing. So I took out this book. It is The Predicament of Culture, 20th Century Ethnography, Literature and Art by James Clifford. Now I'm going to struggle to truly explain what this book is about, so I want to read some of the synopsis to you. It says, "The Predicament of Culture is a critical ethnography of the West in its changing relations with other societies. Analysing cultural practices such as anthropology, travel writing, collecting and museum displays of tribal art, Clifford shows authoritative accounts of other ways of life to be contingent fictions, now actively contested in post-colonial contexts. His critique raises questions of global significance. Who has the authority to speak for any group's identity and authenticity? What are the essential elements and boundaries of a culture? How does self and the other clash in the encounters of ethnography, travel, and modern interethnic relations? He discusses ethnography, and he discusses surrealism, and he discusses sort of popular travel and popular travel fiction. And of course, he discusses museums in the sort of presentation, the acquisition, and the portrayal of knowledge of other cultures from a Western perspective. It's a book from the 80s, I think, so it's not going to be exactly current and up to date, and there's going to be a lot missing. However, I still think it's going to be worth the read, and I feel like I can get a lot from it. And like I said, I really do appreciate his voice and his style, and I just love the sound of this, and I think it could really help myself develop in my own understanding of how I would like to work as an ethnographer in the future, particularly when regarding literature and art and the presentation of knowledge in writing. So I think this is going to be a really interesting read. I think it's going to be a very diverse read too. From what I understand, there's lots of different topics that he's going to talk about, but hopefully he can bring them all together in a really interesting and logical explanation. So they are all the books that I have taken out from the library this month. What books have you taken out from the library recently? Or even what books have you bought recently? Let me know all this in the comments below. Let me know if any of these take your interest, and I'll keep you updated as I read them. And yeah, that is me done for today. So if you liked this video, you can always give it a thumbs up, and you can always subscribe if you haven't yet already. And I shall see you next time for another video. Bye bye.